You scroll for hours, yet feel more lost about who you are with every single pass of your thumb. Somewhere behind the screen, something else is quietly deciding your worth before you get a vote in the matter. This is not freedom. It is a cage with better lighting, and you call it choice because nobody ever taught you to see the bars or notice who installed them in the first place. By the end of this video, you will hold 100 numbered truths and 6 clear mechanisms, counting down from 100 to 1, so you can walk away from every cage you did not choose, the moment you finally recognize the shape of it. Here is the cost of waiting. Every day you skip this lesson, someone else finishes your sentence, sets your ceiling, and you thank them for the privilege without ever asking who handed them the pen. One man mapped every one of these cages before almost anyone dared to name them out loud, and then handed the map to anyone willing to actually read it. His name was Malcolm X. What follows is not a documentary, it is a countdown. 100 truths and 6 mechanisms he paid for with his own life. Watch closely, because he is about to describe you. Malcolm Little was a boy in Michigan. The night his family's house burned to the ground, set alight by men in white hoods, while the fire department stood at the curb and let it burn to the frame. Rule 100. Define yourself before the world defines you and hands you a smaller name. Rule 99. Freedom is never given by a gentle hand. It is taken by a determined one. Rule 98. Education is the one inheritance nobody can seize from you once you have earned it. From that fire came his first conviction. If you do not define yourself, someone else will, and they will not be kind about it. Call this the definition deficit. The empty space every unclaimed identity gets filled by force. Today, an algorithm studies your pauses and hands you back an identity built from your own data, sold to you as personality. Rule 97. Use every honest tool available to defend your own dignity, and wait for no one's permission first. Rule 96. A people who forget their own history will always negotiate from a position of amnesia. Rule 95. Choose sincerity over comfortable diplomacy every single time the truth is on the line. He became Detroit Red on the streets of Boston and Harlem, hustling numbers and stolen goods, until a cold prison cell forced him to copy an entire dictionary by hand, page after page, teaching his own mind to stay uncaged. Rule 94. Say the true thing even when it costs you the whole room's approval. Rule 93. A man who believes in nothing will collapse the moment real pressure arrives. Rule 92. Unity among the powerless is the only armor the powerful cannot pierce. Rule 91. Knowledge of yourself must come before any knowledge borrowed from someone else's classroom. Call this the borrowed mind, the quiet theft of installing someone else's values into your head and calling them your own thoughts. Today it runs through curated feeds and sponsored outrage, engineered to keep you agreeing with people who already agree with you. Rule 90. Consequences always return home to the hand that first set them loose. Rule 89. Nobody who benefits from your oppression will hand you the tools of your own liberation. Rule 88. Responsibility for a mind begins inside the walls of a home, not inside a courtroom. He named this the granted freedom, a freedom bestowed with strings attached, revocable the instant it becomes inconvenient for the one who granted it. It hides today inside every platform that can suspend your voice and every job that tolerates your opinions only until they cost something. Rule 84. If nobody ever criticizes you, you have likely accomplished nothing worth noticing. Rule 83. The future belongs only to those disciplined enough to prepare for it today. Rule 82. A tree's roots and its fruit share the same nature. Judge the tree accordingly. Rule 81. Comfort with your own chains is the first sign they have already worked. By 1959, he sat under television lights for the first time, answering hostile questions with such precision that the interviewer visibly lost control of the segment, and reporters began calling him dangerous. Notice what dangerous meant in their mouths. It rarely means violent. It usually means honest, in a way that threatens somebody's comfortable arrangement. Rule 80. There is a difference between a house built on loyalty and a house built on fear. Rule 79. Silence in the face of injustice is simply consent wearing a quieter coat. Rule 78. The oppressor's flattery is more dangerous than the oppressor's open contempt. Call this the silence tax. Every time fear stops you from saying the true thing, you pay with a piece of your own authority. Today, it collects quietly in your workplace, your family group chat, and the comment you typed and deleted before anyone saw it. Rule 77. A mind trained only to obey will eventually call its own obedience peace. Rule 76. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is discipline outlasting it. Rule 75. The most dangerous lie is the one a man tells himself about his own chains being comfortable. Rule 74. Do not confuse the appearance of progress with the actual substance of it. He grew close with a young boxer named Cassius Clay, teaching him that a man's tongue could be as devastating a weapon as his fists, years before the world came to know him as Muhammad Ali. Rule 73. A people divided against each other will never unite against their common condition. Rule 72. Study your enemy's methods only so you can recognize them wearing new clothes. Rule 71. Patience without a plan is simply postponed defeat. Before the countdown continues, understand something plainly. Every one of these truths keeps reaching people only because someone chose to keep watching instead of scrolling past. Subscribing here is not a favor to a channel. It is your own small declaration that you intend to keep auditing your mind instead of renting it out. Like this now, so the next truth reaches somebody who needs it as badly as you did tonight. He was followed now by federal agents and informants planted inside his own meetings, a government convinced that his clarity itself was a threat to the order it depended on. Rule 70. Anger unshaped by discipline burns the wrong house down. Rule 69. Dignity is not negotiable at any price offered. Rule 68. A borrowed identity always comes with someone else's invoice attached. Rule 67. The most radical act available to an oppressed man is often simply telling the truth. Rule 66. Every generation inherits either the discipline or the excuses of the one before it. Rule 65. Loyalty to a lie is still loyalty to a lie, however old that lie has become. Rule 64. A man who has not examined his own beliefs is simply repeating someone else's script. In April 1964, he boarded a plane to Mecca, completing the Hajj beside pilgrims of every color imaginable, praying shoulder to shoulder with men whose skin he had once been taught to view as permanently opposed to his own. He watched blue-eyed men and dark-skinned men share the same bread and the same unguarded prayer, and something in the framework he had built an entire decade of his public life on quietly and permanently cracked open. Call this the Mecca reversal, the moment a man revises a conclusion he built his identity on, not because he was broken, but because he valued truth more than the comfort of staying consistent. Today, it looks like updating a belief the instant new evidence outweighs your pride in having been right. Rule 63. Real education teaches a man to think for himself, not merely to recite for others. Rule 62. Fear repeated often enough begins to sound like wisdom. Examine it anyway. Rule 61. A closed fist and an open hand serve different purposes. Know which moment calls for which. He returned home and broke publicly from the organization that had built him. And within weeks, former brothers, men who once called him family, began describing him publicly as a marked man. Call this the inner circle blade, the sharpest mechanism of all. The deepest danger rarely comes from an enemy outside your walls. It comes from someone who once held the key to your front door. Today, it shows up as the friend who resents your progress or the colleague exposed by your discipline. Rule 60. The system that profits from your confusion will never fund your clarity. Rule 59. Speak to the room that needs the truth most, not the room that applauds loudest. Rule 58. A leader who cannot be questioned has already begun to fail his own people. On February 21, 1965, at the Audubon Ballroom, he stepped to the podium, said the word peace to open his remarks, and was shot before he finished the sentence that came next. He died at 39 years old, having spent barely a decade in public. Yet the 57 truths already counted down tonight, and the 43 still remaining, have outlived every bullet fired that night. Rule 57. Self-respect is the one possession no law can legislate away from you. Rule 56. Every man owes himself an honest audit of who actually wrote his beliefs. Rule 55. Violence in self-defense is not aggression. It is the oldest form of dignity. Rule 54. A movement without economic power is a voice without a body behind it. Rule 53. Do not trade your convictions for a seat at someone else's table. Rule 52. The most effective chain is the one the prisoner has learned to defend. Rule 51. Truth does not require your comfort in order to remain true. Rule 50. A man's worth is measured by what he is willing to sacrifice for it. Rule 49. Passive, waiting dressed up as patience still delays the same overdue justice. Rule 48. The most powerful weapon is a mind that has decided it will not be lied to again. Rule 47. Every institution that benefits from your silence will call your silence maturity. Rule 46. A people who control their own dollar begin to control their own destiny. Rule 45. Do not mistake the absence of chains for the presence of freedom. Rule 44. A man who has read widely cannot be ruled as easily as one who has not. Rule 43. The oppressor fears organization far more than he fears anger. Rule 42. Change offered on a comfortable timeline usually means change offered too late. Rule 41. A mirror is more useful to a man than a compliment will ever be. Rule 40. Real brotherhood survives disagreement. False brotherhood collapses the moment it is tested. Rule 39. The most convincing prison is the one that never locks the door. It only convinces you not to open it. Rule 38. A people taught to distrust each other will never learn to trust themselves. Rule 37. Speak plainly enough that no one can misquote you without effort. Rule 36. The measure of a man is what he does when no camera is watching. Rule 35. A cause borrowed from someone else's comfort will not survive your own discomfort. Rule 34. Do not confuse tolerance for you with respect for you. They are rarely the same gift. Rule 33. A hungry man reasons differently than a fed one. Remember this before judging either. Rule 32. The one who controls the story controls the outcome far more than the one who controls the argument. Rule 31. A discipline practiced in private will eventually be tested in public. Rule 30. Do not ask an unjust system to grade its own fairness. Rule 29. A man convinced of his own inferiority will defend the very system that convinced him. Rule 28. Real change is rarely comfortable for the ones who benefit from things staying the same. He left one more instruction that still applies to you directly. Do not wait for permission to begin defining yourself. Call this the permission trap. The belief that authority must approve you before you are allowed to act. It shows up as waiting for the promotion before you lead, or waiting for confidence before you take the first real step. Rule 27. Study is not preparation for the fight. Study is already the fight itself. Rule 26. A community that owns nothing negotiates from nothing. Rule 25. Fear of a label has silenced more truth than the label itself ever did. Rule 24. The strongest chain is the one a man has simply stopped noticing. Rule 23. A house united in purpose cannot be moved by a house divided in noise. Rule 22. Trust actions measured over years, not promises measured over a single speech. Rule 21. People who wait for permission to be respected have already answered their own question. Rule 20. The truth does not need your applause in order to remain the truth. Rule 19. A leader's job is to wake people up, not to keep them comfortable. Rule 18. Every act of discipline today is a rejection of someone else's forecast for your life. Rule 17. Real respect is demanded through clarity, never begged for through apology. Rule 16. A man's freedom begins the day he stops asking his jailer for approval. Rule 15. Do not let a comfortable lie replace an uncomfortable truth, simply because it is easier to repeat. Rule 14. Knowledge without action is simply a well-organized surrender. Rule 13. A people confident in their own history negotiate from strength, not gratitude. Rule 12. The measure of courage is what a man risks, not what he merely says. Rule 11. A borrowed peace built on silence will always come due with interest. Rule 10. Real unity requires honesty first and comfort second. Rule 9. A man who studies his oppressor closely often understands his oppressor better than his oppressor understands himself. Rule 8. There is no dignity in politely begging for what was never yours to beg for. Rule 7. A mind fed only one narrative will defend that narrative long after it stops serving him. Rule 6. The most patient tyranny is still tyranny. Rule 5. Self-determination begins the exact moment excuses end. Rule 4. A people who define their own worth cannot be devalued by someone else's opinion. Rule 3. Every generation must fight the version of the old chain wearing the newest disguise. Rule 2. The truth, spoken plainly, is still the sharpest tool available to the powerless. Rule 1. Define your own reality today, or spend tomorrow living inside someone else's. Step out of his era now, because the next few questions are about you. Which mechanism did you flinch at hardest tonight? That flinch is not an accident. It is pointing directly at the exact lie you have been protecting. Ask yourself where the definition deficit and the borrowed mind are running your life right now. Which belief, label, or algorithm has been writing your identity because you never claimed that space first yourself? Ask yourself where you are still living inside a granted freedom that could be revoked at the instant you become inconvenient, and what the silence tax has already cost you this year, and comments deleted, and boundaries never set. Ask yourself who in your circle turned cold the moment you began improving, an inner circle blade you have been ignoring, and where the permission trap is still holding you back from the one action you are waiting to feel ready enough to take. Here's the framework he leaves you with. 3 decision rules to run against any of these 6 mechanisms the next time one shows up disguised as something ordinary. First, before accepting any belief or permission, ask who benefits if you never question it. Second, when fear arrives, ask if it is protecting you or simply collecting a silence tax under a more respectable name. Third, act before permission arrives, and let confidence follow afterward as evidence, never as a condition you keep waiting to receive. Call this entire framework the sovereign ledger, and carry it into every one of the 100 truths you just counted down. Subscribing here is the same act as everything you just heard, a refusal to let someone else's algorithm decide what you see next. Make that declaration now and carry these 100 truths with you into tomorrow. And there it is, rule 1, saved for last, because it was the whole point all along. Everything else tonight was just that single idea, said 100 different ways, until you finally could not look away from it.